If you've got a pergola attached to your house, then you might want to give yourself some extra shelter and protection from the weather, simply by installing some corrugated PVC roofing. It's not a difficult job and will give you an outdoor area that's a lot more usable. Before we get stuck in, you need to be mindful of a few things. Firstly, building regulations only permit you to put a roof that's 20 square metres or under onto your pergola, so make sure you measure it up properly and are under the limit. You'll need a minimum of a 5-degree fall, plus it's always a good idea to check with your council for any updated building regulations, just in case. Rightio, time to measure up for our sheets. So, I've got a length of 2140. Now I'm going to allow 60mm overhang also, so that makes that 2.2. So you can go down and cut them. Now, if you're unsure if your roof is actually parallel, you might want to measure and cut each one of these sheets individually. So I'm just going to mark 2.2 with a vivid on our sheet, one on either side. And just rule a line one side or the other. Now there's a couple of different ways we can actually cut this. One is using a fine tooth handsaw, cutting on a nice low angle, or you can just use a set of tin snips. Now just do the same for all the rest. Now our roofing just sits hard up against our weatherboard. Now I'm not going to leave it like that because otherwise water's just going to get down through the back. So what I've had made up is an apron flashing. Now the way an apron flashing works is it tucks in underneath between these two weatherboards. It's going to give us a nice weather-tight seal. So in order to get that underneath, I'm going to have to open that joint up to slip it in. Now I want to protrude up at least 40mm. Now I've had this apron flashing custom made to the right colour and length by placing an order with the guys in the trade department at Mitre 10. Now one of our best friends you can use for this particular job is using the mighty handy bar. That's just going to get underneath between those two boards and wedge them open gently. We only just want to take our time. We don't want to crack these weatherboards. It's only enough just to get the blade of our sabre saw underneath so we can cut the nails. Okay, I've just about tucked in my apron flashing in behind that weatherboard, so I'll just crank that up a little bit further. Right, now that's looking pretty good. All I need to do now is slip my roofing in underneath, and then once I put a sheet on, I'll come back and nail through the top weatherboard in through my flashing, so then I don't have to climb back up on the roof later on. Now there's just a couple of bits of information you should know before you go screwing down your sheets. Now these great screws here are actually got a cutting edge at the top of them, so we don't actually need to pre-drill them. The shank size is about 6mm. We actually need a 10mm hole to go through our roofing to allow for expansion and contraction. So these little puppies here will do all the drilling for us, so there's no need for us to get a drill bit out. Now, one other thing, I've put my cut end of my sheet underneath the flashing so we don't see any rough points, and I've also made sure that I'm 60mm hanging over the edge. Now just one other thing I'm just going to double check is to make sure that my roofing has got to be parallel with all my rafters, because that's what you're going to see from underneath. I can't trust the old house is going to be 90 degrees. So I'm just going to make sure that the edge of the roof is parallel with the side of our rafter. So I got 60mm there, and that could come over just a tad, and that's 60mm here. That looks looking great. One other little tip too, you just want to make sure your screws are all nice and straight. So I'm just going to mark every second one of these ridge lines. Now I'm not actually going to fix the first ridge there because we're going to have the overlap of the sheet that's going to go through that one. So we'll just start the second one in. And you only want to just drill that down just enough so it's not pushing the sheet down too far. Now when it comes to fixing into our purlins, you only actually need to put the screws every third ridge, but just to make it look nice and tidy and everything in line, I'm just going to follow the same distance as the ones down the bottom. Now because I've got an internal corner here, I'm also going to have to put another apron flashing down this line. Because I've got a corner box here and a flat box in the middle, I've got all these different lines. Just to make it easy for myself when I put the apron flashing on, I've just ripped a couple of packers and I've just siliconed them to the weatherboards, and that's just going to take out all those different lines and all that. All I'm going to do is place the apron flashing hard on top of that, and then I'll have a piece of timber that sits on top of that and it keeps it all nice and watertight. Now I'm just going to fix this apron flashing in place using these 30mm galvanised clouts. Now I'll just do the same along the rest of the line. Okay, I'm just about ready to fix down my little timber head flashing. Then all I have to do is screw down our apron flashing through our roofing into our purlin. Now just a wee little note, the type of screws that we're going to use that go through our steel flashing are not the same type of screws that we use for our PVC sheeting. These are just the standard roofing screw. It doesn't have the pre-drilling sort of function on the end of it. Now when you're laying these sheets, you just want to make sure that you're only doing one overlap onto the previous sheet. Now we're just going to make sure that we're 60mm from the front face, we're in line with the previous sheet, and then once again we fix exactly the same as we did the other sheet. Now just don't forget to nail off your weatherboard through the flashing as you work your way along. Now another thing you also have to do as you work your way along is just pushing the soft edge into the profile of the corrugate. You don't want to jump up and do this later. Sweet as. Now, I've got a half sheet here. I cut that down using my tin snips, and we just screw that down, same as we always have.
As per council regulations, the next thing you'll need to do is install guttering.
Check it out, a great result and a pretty simple way to create some extra shelter and give yourself an outdoor area that's a lot more usable.